Welcome to Minding the Waves, the podcast where we do a deep dive into life's ebbs and flows with the perfect blend of expert advice and heartfelt conversation. I'm your host, Sarah, with my husband, Trevor, and we're thrilled to have you here. So grab a cup of your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's ride these waves together. So welcome to part 2 of How the Hell Did We Get Here? And Trevor did all the talking last time, and this time it is my turn. I always start really nervous at the beginning of these episodes. So I think where I'm going to start is growing up, I always wanted to do something that mattered, that meant something. I always wanted to help people. I always wanted to make a difference. And I had no idea what that meant. My family works in the motion picture industry, as we've covered a bunch. And so I thought maybe being an actress or something like that. The only thing I saw growing up was people who are famous who made the difference, or like firefighters,
first
responders type things, which is funny because I ended up being a quasi first responder during my career at one point. Well, not trauma response, whatever. So I always wanted to make a difference, and I had no idea what that was. And the older I loved softball, I loved to sing, I loved to do all these things. And the older I got, the more I felt like I had no idea what I wanted to do, because there was a lot of people who kept knocking me down in those things. And I had a very similar experience with softball at our high school too, where people who had more money or parents that were more pushy got ahead, even though I was the better player.
Yeah.
And
we both experienced that.
And so I definitely was burnt out when we got to that point. And then when it came to applying to college, like I said, he had an idea exactly what he wanted to do, and I had no clue. And when it came to applying to college, I decided I loved history. I took so many history classes, all the APs I could.
That was a lot of our teachers at high school too, I think. Because, I hated history. And even in high school for me, that was my favorite department because all the teachers
The history
rocked.
department was amazing. I always loved history though.
Yeah.
With my grandfather, he loved history. My uncles, my family really loved looking at things from a historical perspective. And a poli-sci perspective too. We would have political conversations and how that connected to ancient Rome and really big conversations. And I always loved history. I loved it from the time of elementary school. I was super interested. I remember all my friends would dread history class. But actually, no, I always had good history teachers. I think having your teacher makes a huge difference. And I had amazing history teachers in middle school. I had amazing history teachers in high school, and obviously amazing history professors in college because I have a degree in it. So I went into college a declared history major. And everyone's like, why are you doing that? Why not go undeclared? And I was like, well, I have no idea what I want to do. I'd rather get a degree in something I like than a business degree. If I'm going to go to college, I'm going to go to college studying something I love and figure it out from there, and hopefully figure it out in college.
How do you feel about that now?
I'd stick to it. I think so many people get a degree out of the purpose of, I'll find a job. And I know so many business degrees who did not get a job. I found out later, actually, history degrees are one of the most sought out for hiring because in certain fields, because they know how to write, they know how to research.
Yeah. That goes in line with the higher concepts of college. I feel like undergraduates, I don't think a lot of people come away with much value anymore with their undergrads. I think you develop a certain skill set.
You and I have very vastly different experiences in this. I fully disagree. I got way more out of my undergrad. I learned way more, not just in my history degree, but in my psych degree. Hands-on experience of what I use in my daily life, I learned in undergrad, not in my master's program.
Well, you're proving my point, though. I'm saying that the subject matter is not what people come away with. I'm saying that they develop a certain skill set during undergrad. So historians learn how to research and write and think like a historian. Mathematical people, we learn how to approach things from a mathematical view and how to maybe analyze data. If you gave me a random pop quiz or test from any of my classes, I'd probably fail it right now. And I think that's probably the same for any other person. When you go into masters, that's where I feel like you get a little bit more value from that dollar and that piece of paper that says you did something.
I feel like I might cut this, but I feel like in many ways my master's was useless, and many people in my master's program while we were in it felt the same way. My therapist, for a good portion of the time while I was in my master's program and recently after, also went to my master's program and also felt that way.
I also think that was it
was $100,000 piece of paper specifically so that I could do the job that I do.
And when did you do that? It was not during COVID, or was it during COVID?
My therapist I had was before COVID. And I was a little before COVID, a little after, and I felt that way before COVID. This is a completely different topic, and so we'll get into that maybe sometime. Maybe I'll have another therapist on here of the changes schools made in recent history, and that instead of teaching how to be a therapist and clinically what you're doing, and going more towards theory and how that shifted. And so I had a conversation with someone recently that talked about, because I actually asked her this question because she used to be a supervisor, and she's like, people graduate grad school and have so much to learn in just basics. And that's kind of how I've always felt, is I felt like I was missing basics and I had to learn it along the way, which is why I got frustrated. But we'll get so this is another topic.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks for the tangent. So I decided I was going to, if I was going to go to college, I was going to study something that I loved, and it was going to be history, and I'd figure it out. And at the time, I was doing mock trial. Being a lawyer was my backup plan. If I couldn't figure anything out, I was going to go to law school.
Really?
Yeah.
I could not see you doing that.
I couldn't either, so I was figuring something out. My worst nightmare was the idea of having to continue school after undergrad.
I will say, though, you've gotten a lot better at logicking, so it could have worked, maybe.
Teacher or lawyer were always, on the back burner of, meh. It was things people always told me I'd be good at. I struggle with where to go on this, and I've thought about it a lot since we recorded your episode, because it's been a few weeks. And I'm not going to go into detail. There are a few people in my life who know the detailed version of this story. It was my senior year. I'd already accepted. It was spring of my senior year, already been accepted into Point Loma Nazarene University, which is where I went for undergrad. Amazing school, amazing campus, right on Sunset Cliffs in San Diego. My dad always joked later that apparently I required an ocean view for college. And I said, well, if you're going to have to stare out a window, you might as well look at something pretty. So I had already declared I had a friend's 18th birthday in which a lot of drama went down, and especially between this person and their mom. And then I mediated it because I was always the mom friend. I was always the friend. I had feminine hygiene products in my bag. I had gum. I had snacks. I made sure everyone was hydrated. I was the one who listened to everything. I was the mom friend. I'm the textbook mom friend. I'm a little less so now because I'm a therapist and I'm exhausted in providing that much space for people in my personal life. However, I still do. We recently went on a trip and I literally like had everything and I was like, here's your allergy meds, here's Tylenol, here's a liquid IV, here's a bottle of water, drink. So yeah, that's just part of my personality. But anyways, I had this friend's 18th birthday, and I mediated a fight between my friend at the time and her mom. And the next day I was walking into a movie and I like remember walking into this movie theater so vividly. I was in the parking lot and I got a text from my friend's mom and she said, "Thank you so much. That was so amazing. You're such an incredible person. Have you ever thought about being a therapist? You'd be really good at it." And a like light bulb went off in the back of the head. And I literally remember like right here, ding. And it stuck with me. And at that point I was like, I don't know, we'll see. And I went into, but it did stick with me. And then I went into undergrad, a declared history major. And by my second semester had added my psych major.
You don't give me any credit at all in this story, huh? I think unlike me not knowing it that was going on, I had also either before or after mentioned that you might like psychology, and I think that helped with the light bulb. And you're like, okay,
yeah.
Like,
so it was definitely after, and you mentioned it's like, hey, have you thought about psychology? And I was like, that was like what was going on in the backseat.
And I had taken an intro class. I can't remember if it was my freshman year. It would have been spring, the second semester, or if it was sophomore year. But I thought you would have liked it. And I mean, I almost minored in it because I loved it so much. And I was like, oh yeah, this might work for Sarah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was giving you a hard time.
That's fair. But in talking to you and in talking to Eileen, and like very important people in my life now that I didn't know were going to be as important as they are now then were key in making that decision. And Eileen was important because she was a psych major.
This is one of her roommate friends.
Yeah, so she was one of my first friends in college. She lived across the hall from me in my freshman dorm. Ended up being my roommate for most of the rest of college and is still one of my really great friends now. I will like take a moment to be like, the reason why I struggle to talk about this is that person who and their mom who I'm talking about, I am no longer friends with and no longer part of my life. And so it was really hard for me for a phase of that, because when people asked me why did I decide to become a therapist, that was a really key place.
It's a core memory.
It's a core memory. It was a core thing. Yeah. These were core people in my life, and they no longer are. And that's really hard. I'm actually in a good place. I feel really good about it. Like a little rumbly tumblies that this is going on the internet, and then they're gonna see this. However, it's fine.
It's part. People are like water, you know. They come together and they separate.
Yeah, like Hello Hayes is one of I talk about this all the time, and at work is Hello Hayes is a content creator who does like an advice column and all this stuff, and she has like the 6 best friend theory, which if you haven't seen it, you should go look it up. I'm probably.
I've never heard of this. Why don't you tell me?
Okay, I was like, I'll probably do an episode on this at some point, but it's my favorite thing. It literally is. You have 6 best friends, and when we try to put different friends in different areas is when we set ourselves up for failure. So there's the 3 that are like the close best friends. You got your North Star bestie, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Your North Star, the person you call when shit hits the fan, the person who has your back, like knows you so well, and like you can just like read each other's minds. Like there are.
Do dogs count?
I guess, if you want. But yeah, so North Star bestie, exactly what it sounds like. And then there's the dead body bestie. Exactly what it sounds like. The person you call when you have to hide a dead body.
Oh, okay. I'm like, I know who's who for you. As you say these. I don't know who mine are, but I know yours.
Yeah. And North Star bestie and dead body bestie can like overlap. I would say mine definitely do. And then there is OG bestie. And that's that's exactly what it sounds like. And I have a few people who I would say this is for you. But OG bestie is Like the original, like used to be a North Star, but might not be a North Star anymore.
I got like 3 of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might not be a North Star anymore, but like when you talk, it's like no time has passed. There's no ill will. There's still so much love, but they're not that anymore. Your OG bestie might still be your North Star bestie. I wouldn't say that's our case. And then the less close ones is like your work bestie, and work bestie is like the people you work with.
Yep.
And sometimes the work bestie might transcend outside of work. So like Nikki was my work bestie in treatment. She's still one of my good friends, so she transcended, but not all work besties transcend. And then you have your good time bestie. And this is the friend that usually gets messed up because we can all think of someone that like we enjoy spending time with. Like we party, like you could party with them, you could hang out with them, like you enjoy hanging out with them in a group setting or even like in a small group setting, that you enjoy them. But anytime you try to get closer to them, you try to like make the friendship deeper, it just feels off. It doesn't land, it doesn't hit right, and then you're like, I really like this person, why am I not closer to them? And problem is, they're meant to be your good time bestie. They're not meant to be your North Star bestie. Not everyone can be your North Star bestie. They're meant to be good time. Makes a lot of sense.
It's like a party friend almost.
Yeah. So like when I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, it took so much pressure off, because I was like, I don't have to be super close to everyone in my life. I can have boundaries and really enjoy my good time besties. And then the last one, which is really hard, is the seasonal bestie. The people who come into your life for a season.
Okay, yeah. I know who yours would be.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. That makes sense.
Yeah. And sometimes seasonal besties are like extreme friend breakups, and sometimes they're not. Yeah. Sometimes they just like transition out.
Yeah, but okay, so you were on that core memory, and that all clicked, and you started psychology.
So I went into by second semester I had added my psych major, and I will say my school did a really great job in teaching the fundamentals, teaching all the things. I took a ton of units every semester and did summer school in order to graduate in 4 years with 2 degrees, which was a really big deal for me. My siblings did not graduate college with a bachelor's degree in 4 years. I'm the youngest of 4. Age gap is 8, 12, 15. And so my parents had made it very clear my entire life, if I graduate college in 4 years, I get a car.
Yep.
And by the time we got to that point, I was like, oh, like, I don't know if I'm still going to get the car, but I'm still, like, doing this out of the principle of the thing. Yeah. And I worked my butt off. It was hard and totally worth it. They definitely prepared me really well in that they had classes of, like, and I would say this, both of my history degree and my psychology degree, they had classes specifically on what are career paths you can go with these. What would grad school look like? And had people come in from schools and like ask them questions. What would professional life look like? And like everywhere in between. And like what would the pay scale look like? And all of this. And so like answered really lifestyle real questions, which was so helpful. And so I decided that I wanted to go for my PsyD. In psychology, for a doctoral level, there's the PhD, which is more research-based, and then there's the PsyD, which is more clinical-based. And I love research when it's history. When it's science and psychology, no. Experiments are not my thing. Case studies, not fun. So I was going to go the PsyD route because it was more clinical-based. And I'm applying for schools, I'm in an internship, I'm doing all the things, and I had someone who was writing my letter of recommendation turn it in a little late. And so I got deferred, waitlisted, or denied at all the PsyD programs I had applied to because of that. And so the only school that I got into as an acceptance was my backup option, Pepperdine, for a master's program. And Pepperdine, how they do it is they do a master's program that you have to apply to, and then separately you apply for their PsyD program. And it's 2 separate programs. most PsyD and I would say doctoral programs for psychology is you get a master's along the way and you just all do it all at once. And it's like 4 to 6 years.
Yikes.
7 years. And you just go straight through and just get like an honorary master's as part of it. And so it ended up being my backup option. And I also remember vividly getting this acceptance letter. I was literally at a Korean barbecue place for my friend Evans. I wanted to call him Kevin because that's what we called him, but his name is actually Evan. Birthday. And we were celebrating his birthday and I checked my email and I got accepted. And I just remember being so excited, but also such calm. I was like, this is the right path for me. Great. It's like, if I get in somewhere else, I'll figure it out, but like, I'm doing this and this is going to be great. Now looking back on it, I am so glad that this happened. This is like, universe, God, like whatever was out there had a plan for me. Mm-hmm. I would also say, like, in general, I was born, this is something we will get into probably at some point in this podcast, but I was born 8 years after my mom's tubes were tied. Yes, you heard me right. And so my life has very much been like, you make a plan, God laughs. And that is kind of how I've tried to live my life. When I live my life otherwise, I like...
That's how you rationalize your existence, huh?
Yeah, it really is. Because when I tried to, like, be type A, super organized, control everything blows up in my face. But when I go with the flow, it tends to, like, work out exactly how it's supposed to go. So I try to go with the flow as much as possible. I'm also still a little bit of a control freak. Anyways, so I got into Pepperdine. I graduated college in May the 4th, 2019 was my graduation date. Started Pepperdine, which is so funny because when I was applying to schools, I got waitlisted at Pepperdine and my dad really wanted me to go. And then I did not want to go because it is 30 minutes from home, and ended up being like, I'm going to Loma Dad, sorry. And then I like got in, and so it was like a nice thing. And my sister had always wanted to go to Pepperdine, so it was like a nice full circle moment. Started grad school, was in person, and I paid more to do the in-person program because I do not do well on telehealth. Or not telehealth. I do great in telehealth. I don't do well in Zoom,
Skype.
Yeah, online, like online school. I am very neurodivergent and have really bad dyslexia, and like I need to like be in a space in order for my brain to like want to listen. And that's not for therapy. That is specifically into like learning a lesson that a teacher is telling me, because if I can get distracted, I will. Anyways, so we all know how this is gonna go. I had my first semester. It was great. Actually, it wasn't great. It was really hard. Grad school was the hardest time of my life. Shit hit the fan so much, which is a really common experience.
Yeah, again, there's that huge gap between undergrad and master's. It's not like...
Oh, I wasn't even saying school-wise. Like, school-wise, I could handle it. School-wise, I was ready. I was taking master-level classes in my undergrad anyways. Like, the way my professors...
I thought you had said you'd experienced a similar gap, though, in the past. All right, never mind.
Yeah, like there's a gap. It was harder 1,000%, and like I really had to like work hard. However, a lot of how my professors taught my undergrad classes were at like a master's doctoral level. So the information itself wasn't hard. It was how my professors in my master's program were teaching it and how they were grading it. The hardest part of my master's program was 1,000% my personal life. I lost a person really important to me my first semester of my first year. And then I lost another person who was really important to me second semester of my second year. And as we're getting into, there was a global pandemic. How Pepperdine does things differently, just in like, if you have any interested in going into psychology and like what that looks like is we have these things called practicum, and most master's programs have you have a year of classes before you can apply to practicum. So you usually apply in the spring to start in the fall. Pepperdine, you have a semester, so you are trying to start in January for your practicum sites. I applied to a bunch of places. There was one place that I went in and I had like this feeling that I wanted to work in sexual assault response and like trauma therapy in general, but I was willing to try anything because you got to try it once to see if you like it. And there was a place called the Coalition for Family Harmony, which is a nonprofit in Oxnard in Ventura County that I love to this day, love, support. They do amazing things. And so I applied there. And what was funny is I had a group interview with two of my really great friends in grad school. We actually all drove down together.
Oh, nice.
And then we came back here, and we one of my friends had never been to Cheesecake Factory before. And so my mom's favorite restaurant is Cheesecake Factory. So we like ordered a bunch of cheesecake and a bunch of items and like ate that and celebrated. Unfortunately, neither of them picked that practicum site. But I applied there, got the job as a volunteer trainee, which is what it's called in part of getting your 3,000 hours towards licensure. And we started, and it was amazing. Really great training, really great intro. I had one supervisor going in, and then something happened, like, by the beginning of March. And, beginning of March, before things got chaotic in the world. But at the beginning of March, she stopped working at the Coalition. I have no idea what happened. But she stopped working. I got a new supervisor. This is important later on. But so then I got a new supervisor. I met like a couple times in person with him. Mm-hmm. He was fabulous. He was a supervisor who told me, and I tell this to people all the time, that our job as therapists is to put ourselves out of business. And if you're not in the business to make sure your clients do not need you, you should not be a therapist. Which is why I get so excited for my clients who graduate or want to take a break from therapy or whatever. Like, my goal is for you to not need me. And so then, as we all know, the world shut down. So I got 3 months, 2.5 months of working in person, and the world shut down, and then I was doing telehealth and all the things. I had actually, and there was a hiring freeze, and so I had applied right before then to be a sexual response team therapist, which was a paid position, which is a huge deal for trainees. They're not usually paid. You get paid for these hours. And there was a hiring freeze, and because of everything, I was like, I want to say May, June before I was finally hired, but I was the first person hired after the hiring freeze. And usually they would split it into 2 10-hour positions, but because of that situation, I got hired for one 20-hour position. So I was getting paid for 20 hours as a trainee. And going through, no, it had to have been earlier. I must have been hired by April, May. But yeah, so anyways, I got hired. And part of that was what I was already doing, which we've talked about before, is the sexual assault response team advocate, where if sexual assault, trigger warning for a lot of this, I'll probably put up something earlier. When a sexual assault happens and a forensic exam needs to take place, we get called. And I did 2 calls in person before COVID happened, and then we were doing it on the phone, which was not ideal. No one wanted to talk to us. Fair. You were probably dissociating. But we did our best, and I was running a bunch of groups. I was doing all these things. And then going into the fall semester of the next year, my second year, our program was 2 years, 2 full semesters, and 2 half semesters, almost like quarters, for summer. And so we had 3 semesters each year. And then going into the fall, right before I started school, there was a person who had become licensed who was then leaving the coalition, and they ran an entire department called the online romance scam, online scam, for online fraud department. And so then I got had been going in and like helping her in that space, and so then I got offered that position. So then I was then working a 32-hour position, which was considered full-time. Like, not full-time, but full-time enough that I was offered benefits. And a slight pay bump, I think. I don't remember. So I'm now, keep in mind, we are staying at home. I am working now 32 hours a week. I am still a full-time student, and our schedule was, I had classes Tuesday and Thursday basically all day, and then Monday, Wednesday, Friday I did not have class. But I'm working full-time, have a full-time student, and we are quarantining here, and I was kind of the person who was volunteered as tribute to do all the grocery shopping. I was cooking a lot. I was doing all the things. And then we were also moving, and there was a lot of chaos here. We moved from like upstairs to the pool house where we live now. And then I went into the next semester, and it was rough. And then my grandfather fell and passed during the second semester of my second year as I'm doing all of these things. And I graduated. Oh, Pepperdine was weird. It was like we had our graduation ceremony like a month before we actually finished, or like 6 weeks before we actually finished classes. And so we had the ceremony virtually online. And I remember feeling so overwhelmed and so underwhelmed by the entire experience. And we were also having a wedding here that year. And so like, it was just like so overlooked, so not important. And then finally finished in mid-June, and what I forgot to tell you in the story is during the middle of the summer between my 2 years, my second supervisor left, and then I had to get a new supervisor. And by January, basically I'll get into how many supervisors, but there was a lot of supervisor chaos too. And the reason why that's important is that every time you have a supervisor, you have to like sign off on a bunch of paperwork, and then sign new paperwork for the new supervisor in tracking your 3,000 hours. Thank God for Track My Hours. That saved my life. I can't imagine if I had to not have that. But anyways, I graduate, and at this point, I have been for almost a year running a department and running groups. I am now an associate, and I am one of the most, because of how many people had left and we didn't have a clinical supervisor on staff, we were contracting out for those. I was one of the most high-ranked clinical therapists on staff. And so I was like, I need more training than this. And so even though I love the coalition and it's amazing and wonderful, I left. And I actually applied and was going to go work in a hospital setting. I had a job signed up to work in a hospital setting. And then a recruiter on LinkedIn reached out to me. And I ended up lining up 3 interviews for one day, and I applied to all. I went to all 3, all 3 offered me a job, and because I had a recruiter, they negotiated based on who was the best fit, and who could give me the highest pay, and so I actually started my treatment job, the job I worked in treatment, the day I was supposed to start working in the hospital. So it ended up working out great, and it was amazing. What I love about my treatment job is it introduced me into brain spotting, which is a mindfulness somatic approach that helps your brain create new neural pathways to help heal itself.
And now in layman terms? For those listening, because I obviously know what that means.
Basically, what happens is trauma is stored in like the limbic system, brainstem part of the brain, and talk therapy happens in the frontal lobe. And a lot of like what we're trying to do in therapy is like push down to get down to the trauma, but instead with brain spotting, we go where the trauma is stored. You get there and you create new pathways to help bring it up to the frontal lobe so that you can then talk about it.
And what's one of the ways that you do this?
The research behind this is based on different eye positionings, you will have a different emotional response. So I literally hold a stick.
With a ball.
With a ball at the end.
It sounds nuts, but then you do it and it's like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah. If you go to my Instagram, there is a clip in my reels of like me showing how this works.
Kind of how I think about it as someone that's not in the field and just a normal knowledge on this kind of stuff is, you know how some people will look a certain like direction when they're trying to think of a lie, or another certain direction when they're trying to think of like a memory or something or a fact.
Exactly.
It's kind of like that, and there's this certain angle for like this trauma response stuff that you need to find, and once you do, it's like this psychosis like therapeutic thing that you do.
Not psychosis, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's a collaboration with Namaste Wellness, and I do a little brain spotting on Nikki, and she explains her experience on it. And so we'll probably do a full episode just on brain spotting. But this introduced me to brain spotting, and then they offered that they would pay for half of my training. They didn't end up doing that, but it was a really great opportunity at the time. Right around then, we had just gotten engaged prior to me starting this job. And so we are planning a wedding. We're doing all the things. And I knew, in general, I wanted to work in private practice. And so I had worked in treatment prior when I had an internship in a hospital/treatment setting in undergrad. That was amazing. I loved working there. And we ran an art therapy group and a spirituality group for Ronald McDonald's Treatment Center in San Diego. Or the McDonald Treatment Center. It wasn't Ronald McDonald, but like the McDonald's Treatment Center with Sharp Hospital. And it was amazing. And so I knew I liked treatment, and I was shocked. I didn't know if I could do it. And I did like it. It was hard. I worked in a residential and an IOP PHP, did both. And I also, as part of your 3,000 hours, you have to get 500 child, family, or couple hours. And I needed more of those. And so I was at a 4th birthday and mentioned to someone that I was like looking like at some point going to work in private practice, but like not in like a space of like I'm going to switch. And they had been subleasing from a therapist who was then looking to hire associates. And this happened in the beginning of December. By January, I was hired and started working in this private practice. So I, from January until April, did both. And I was trying to do full-time at one, part-time at other, and then it ended up being part-time at both, and then part-time to full-time at private practice. And by mid-April, I was done working in treatment, working in private practice, and loving it, establishing all of that journey. And then I worked there for a year and a half. I actually had finished my hours by January of 2023, and submitted my application, and it takes about 3 to 6 months to hear back if your hours are approved. My hours got approved in, I want to say May, and then once you get approved, you can schedule the test, and the test, how it works at the testing center is you either can get it like within 2 weeks of you getting accepted, or like 2 months in advance. And so I remember I had my test on July 7th, which is super funny because it's actually 2-year anniversary of our engagement. It was also the day Speak Now Taylor's version came out, which I remember very clearly because it's my favorite Taylor Swift album, and I wouldn't let myself listen to it until I passed my test. And so I took it and passed on the first try, which was amazing. And then I had to wait like 10 days because of the holiday of like 4th of July. They were behind to get my official number. And from there, I applied with Headway, which is how I charge insurance, and then was waiting to get paneled. It took about 90 days to get paneled with all of those insurance agencies. And by October 2023, which is so crazy that it's been almost a year, I opened my own private practice, Calming Waters Wellness. And it like kind of came together all beautifully. I also stayed because I was going for 2 licenses. I went for the LMFT, Licensed Marriage and Family Therapist, which, fun fact, most of the time people don't work with families, couples.
Yeah, they gotta fix that branding.
I don't work with couples. I have in the past. I just don't choose to. I'll do premarital counseling all day, but people who are on the verge of divorce is just not my bread and butter. I don't work with kids under the age of 14 anymore. It used to be 12, but now it's 14. Don't do family therapy. Every once in a while, I'll do family therapy, like with if I have a teen client, or I'll have like someone's partner come in and we'll do a session. However, I don't specialize in that. I do trauma therapy. I also work with anxiety and depression and neurodivergencies. But so that is the one license. The other license is a licensed professional clinical counselor. And the two different, that license is more recognized by other states. The MFT license is more specific to California. However, it is getting more recognized by other states. These are general statements. I'm happy to go into it more at some point if anyone wants. However, with the LPCC license, you need to have more units or more clinical hours before you graduate. I think it's like 280 versus the other one's 235, which was fine because I graduated with over 1,000 hours. Like it's
crazy.
There's like a cap on how many hours you can do as a trainee, and I was like 300 short of that. I almost hit the cap. And then the other thing is all your trainee hours, so all those 1,000 plus hours, do not count towards your 3,000 licensure. So like when I was done with my MFT hours and submitted my application,
You start over?
No, so like once I was an associate, I could count those, but so I had 1,000 hours. So I ended up doing over 4,000 hours of like counting between all the things. And so I finished my PCC hours, not because I needed more hours, but like I had to you have to have 2 full years of associate supervision before you can apply. So I was literally only waiting on weeks of like amount of supervision, and then I could apply. And so I did that, and I finally sent my application in August of last year, never heard back. And so in like November, December, I'm like emailing them. I'm like, hey, what's going on? And they're like, oh, we sent your application back. I'm like, why'd you send my application back? And they're like, there was something wrong with it. We sent it back. And so then I scoured everywhere trying to find this application. Fun fact, my application got lost in the mail. It's somewhere. And so then I thought I had to provide all new hours to track these. And so that meant I had to get all new signatures and all these things. And so I finally reached back out to them and was like, hey, like, do I need to like, and they're like, oh no, we still have your hours. We just need a new check and a new application. But they didn't tell me that in the like 3 months I was in conversation with them. And so I filled out a new application. I filled out a new check. And luckily a friend of mine had just completed her MFT hours, and she didn't trust the mailing system. And so she literally flew her son up to Sacramento to deliver it. And so he delivered mine with them.
Nice.
And like a week later, they're like, okay, great. We're not counting 300 of these hours because you're missing a piece of paper. And it had been 4 years. And so I couldn't find the piece of paper that they needed. And so then I had to go back to my old supervisor and be like, hey, these hours that I never got signed off on when I worked for you, can I like get these signed off on? Which was from end of July to October. And she's like, of course. And so she signed those off. I send them off and they're like, great. Keep in mind, at this point, it's May of this year. And they're like, great. In the next week, you should get a letter of like acceptance, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. What they don't tell you is it's different from the MFT license. You have to go to a secondary website to apply there to get approved to even schedule your exam. Didn't know that. Someone told me. Figured that out. Got that all set. And then I emailed them and was like, hey, I never, like a month later, I realized I never got the letter. I was like, hey, I never got the letter. I never got like approved to take this. And so I did that on a Friday. The following, and I also filled out the other application on that Friday. And this is in June. The following Monday, finally get approved and so at this point, it's like 4th of July.
Whoever's running this needs to resign like tomorrow. This is nuts.
Got approved by both of them that I could then take my exam. And then I look at my exams, and fun fact, every year for your associates, you have to renew your associate's degree. My associate's degree is expiring, or associate's license. My associate's license this year expires end of September. And so like I'm like have to kind of rush this because it takes 45 days for this to change and update. And I was like, if I don't get this done by September 30th, I have to pay another $200 for something that like it's been a year. So I finally get accepted. I look at the dates, and there are no dates until October anywhere around us. And so then I'm literally looking at like Culver City. I'm looking at like all these different, like 50 miles away to see if I can get in sooner. And then I have to adjust I'm looking to adjust things. And I'm literally checking every day for a good date. And then August 8th rolls around. But actually, like, it was 2 weeks prior. Like, 2 weeks before August 8th, I finally find the testing center by me that I've taken 3 other tests, because I did forget to mention that for both of these, I had to take a law and ethics within a year of being an associate. So I did take those 2 tests as well. This is, passed those both on the first time. So where I had finally taken it, and a date opens on August 8th, 2 weeks before then. And so I grab it up, 8 a.m., August 8th, I'm taking my test, and so I'm studying. And when I did my MFT license, I like took time off, I slowed down, I did all those things. But now I am running my own practice, and like didn't schedule for this and had no idea. So I'm trying to do all the things. So me. Anyways, so I take that. I didn't even take that day off. I had clients at 2 o'clock, but I had the morning off, and I take the test, and thank goodness I passed. And I'm still actually in the waiting period of the 45 days to see if it's like that day. Went home, did all the paperwork to get it updated, and so now I'm still in the limbo phase of, is it going to be updated in time before I have to renew? And we'll find out. I'll fill you guys in. I will definitely post on Instagram if it happens beforehand. But yeah, so like that's my career story. That was really long-winded for sure. And there are a lot of pits and valleys, and it was really hard and amazing, and I'm definitely the person I am because of it. And there's a bunch of other things I can go into at any other time. However, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for being here and listening to me ramble. If you have any comments, questions, concerns.
Any concerns, but...
But if you have any questions, please let me know. I'm happy to like answer any of your questions, and if you want any other topics for us to cover in our next episode. But that's the end of How the Hell Did We Get Here? Woo. We'll catch you next time. Bye, guys.
Bye.